Welcome to the Digital Amateur Television Experimenters Night. This is VK7OTC, the club station of the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania. Amateur radio is a worldwide hobby that has many different aspects. Digital television is just one of the many modes and areas that are covered. Maybe you're interested in becoming involved in the DATV Experimenters Nights. You realise that you do not have to be a radio amateur or need any ATV equipment to participate anywhere in the world. Also participate in the night by coming up to the Queen's Domain clubrooms. Yes, right on top of the Queen's Domain in the heritage-listed Coast Wireless Station. You never know, we might get you in front of the camera or behind doing one of the many roles during the night. We get underway with our program on a Wednesday night from 7:30 p.m. local time. We'll see you soon. This is VK7 OTC.
That's better. Okay, thank you, Lionel. That's very good. Thank you for letting us know. And this is VK7OTC, the club station of the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania, with our DATV Experimenters Night. And Justin VK7TW at the mic. Thank you to Lionel for letting us know that there is no audio. We now have audio, so fantastic. We've got a huge night tonight. It's our Christmas edition. So stay tuned. We've got Lionel KJ7OFH, and we've got ZL4KENZ from ZL. So good evening to, and we've got Paul, of course, VK7PEP. Not a problem at all. No coffee here yet. Okay. Well, I'll let you grab some coffee, because we're going to whiz you through a whole lot of things and some really interesting stuff tonight. I'll just start by wishing to acknowledge Tasmanian Aboriginal people, the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet and present tonight, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, the knowledge, the culture and the hopes of Aboriginal Tasmania. So, okay. We've got, we'll start off tonight. There was a whole lot of documents that was released by the ACMA, our Australian Communications and Media Authority, just recently. And it's in preparation for a couple of things. Number one, the move to the class licence. And what I'm intending to do next week is actually go through what that change to a class license means through those documents that have just been released, and also I'll just this week I'm going to focus on the accredited assessor guidelines. Now the accredited assessor guidelines, there were some guidelines released. There was also some subordinate legislation which was released, which is the Radio Communications Accreditation Amateur Radio Examinations Rules for 2023. Now this is the underpinning subordinate legislation for amateur radio assessments when it gets handed back to the ACMA from the Australian Maritime College, which it currently is with. Now there were 5 documents that were released by the ACMA. The very first one was the guidelines, and then there was the subordinate legislation, for the assessment, there was also the explanatory statements. Now, explanatory statements, you usually have to go looking down behind the door that says beware of the leopard, but they actually put them onto their website. These are fascinating because this is the intention of the legislation. So these are a really good read, and if there is something in here that you don't quite understand, the first place you go is the explanatory notes. So what I've put together is just some dot points, some very short dot points around what the changes are and what assessments will look like come the 19th of February 2024. So that's when all of this comes into effect. So some of the things that we need to note is, and some of this information also comes from last Friday. There was a webinar that was held between the ACMA and many of the assessors that are transitioning from the AMC to the ACMA. And this webinar, this hour-long webinar, went through these guidelines, there was a question and answer session, which was very informative, and some of the comments that I've got here were informed by that webinar. So, one of the key things which got a bit of a go was there are no private residences. You cannot hold a assessment in a private residence, and they do actually define what a private residence is. However, they emphasise the fact that they have removed the 50-kilometre limit for remote assessments. So what does that mean? They used to have, and the AMC has, because it's still in force, has a 50-kilometre limit. If the person is closer than 50 kilometres to the place of assessment, then they could not, and they cannot at this point in time, hold a remote assessment. They have removed that. So come the 19th of February, you will be able to do a remote assessment. And the fact that they have said no private residences, what they are relying on is the fact that you could set up a remote assessment even if the person was next door. It gets over, hopefully, that issue with you not able to hold an assessment within a private residence. There is also, assessors can determine current competency. So recognition of current competency to the level required and whether a practical assessment is required or not. Now, assessors in the current arrangements with the AMC cannot determine that. You have to have a practical assessment if it's deemed so that you need to sit. If you're a brand new amateur, the practical assessment is pretty normal. But if you're, say, a returning amateur who hasn't been on air for quite a while, then you had to hold, if it was beyond a certain period of time, you had to hold a practical assessment, which in some cases was ludicrous because the person who was getting their license back was probably, had years and years of operating experience. So that now come the 19th sits with the assessor. Fantastic. Assessments can be downloaded and conduct an assessment digitally. So you can actually sit somebody down in front of a computer and get them to complete the assessment online effectively, and then the assessor can mark that particular assessment paper and let the person know whether they passed or not. So that literally, we haven't been able to do this. There is a whole lot of paperwork involved. Everything is now being digitised. It is uploaded to the ACMA portal, the Assist portal, and those exams can also then be either downloaded and printed, or they can be actually run online in front of a notebook or an iPad or something like that that's got net connection. So that's a really good step forward, fantastic step forward. copies, the interesting, there's a little bit of a nuance in the guidelines, which intrigued me, and I wish I'd had it for the webinar. But copies of all the correspondence about organising the assessment need to be uploaded. So need to be sent to the ACMA when you send the completed assessment. So that's a bit of an interesting nuance. That might get a bit of a go in one of the future webinars when we can find out why they actually want this sort of thing. Now, the other thing is the assessor can mark the paper, is able to mark the paper and let the candidate know the outcome. And they're also obviously able to then sit down and go through those questions that the candidate got wrong, which is what we used to do before the AMC took over, because we were marking the paper and we knew which ones they actually got wrong. And so it was a great learning experience for the candidate and the assessor. So that's one of the fantastic things. So if you're successful, fantastic, great. You're successful. If you're not successful, there is now in the guidelines a 3-month wait period before you can resit that particular assessment. So if you do a foundation assessment and you don't pass it, you've got to wait 3 months for a foundation assessment. Now the loophole here is, if you then wanted to do, say if you, I'll flip it round. If you did an advanced assessment, you didn't pass that one, you've got to wait 3 months for to resit. But you can do a standard and you can do a foundation if you want to. So why wouldn't you do a standard and a foundation? Because now assessments cost nothing come the 19th of February. But if you wanted to resit that particular exam, you've got to wait 3 months. Now, in the webinar, there were lots of questions asked about this 3 months, and the ACMA let us know that it was because they are putting out blocks of assessments every 3 months. And so if you were to resit it within that 3-month period, you potentially are sitting down to exactly the same assessment, because that's the assessment that is for that particular 3 months. Now, there were lots of questions in the webinar about why aren't you randomizing every time you download the assessment. It randomizes very much like the WIA's foundation assessment part of their website, where you can go on and each time you do it, it just randomizes the questions. It gives you another 25 questions. And so unfortunately, their developers haven't got to the point where they can do this randomization, so they actually download a new set every 3 months. So that's the 3-month limit. It's actually more about process limitations than it is about anything else. So that was a bit disappointing, but hopefully in the fullness of time that will improve and they'll randomize the assessments. And so that's the main, probably the main differences. I suppose one of the key things and the key improvements is assessments don't cost anything. The call sign allocation and the recognition certificate, the issuing of the recognition certificate, and I'll just clarify, it is when the class license comes into force on the 19th of February, it is now a recognition certificate because it is a class license, not an apparatus license. Under the apparatus license, you have a certificate of proficiency, an amateur operator's certificate of proficiency. Once the apparatus license is no longer in force for amateur licensing, then it becomes a class license, and what you will be issued with is a recognition certificate. That recognition certificate for advanced licensees will have the CEPT and the HARIC statement on there, so that there is we're a CEPT HARIC signatory in Australia, so any CEPT HARIC signatory countries, we can then operate in those countries. So it will have that statement on the recognition certificate. My understanding is the ACMA are reissuing everybody with a recognition certificate. Not sure whether that is the case. I wanted to have asked the ACMA about that and clarify whether they will or they'll just do it on a case-by-case basis. So that's a possibility. But if you're going overseas and you want to operate overseas, you do need that piece of paper that actually has those heliax statements on them, so the relevant authorities in that particular country can see that there is the ability for you to operate amateur radio in that particular country. So there are some international requirements. But anyway, that's the assessor accredited assessor guidelines. All the assessors are going through effectively a re-accreditation process right at the moment and supplying a whole lot of information to the ACMA. I've been through that process. We've been linking working with vulnerable people card and all sorts of stuff, uploading our teaching qualifications and all of that sort of stuff, etc., etc. So that's all going on right at the moment in preparation for a go live date on the 19th of February. And if there is anybody out there who is wanting to do an assessment in 2024, our next assessment, foundation license and assessment session is on the 24th of February 2024. So if you're interested in that, contact Reg. All the details are on the website and on our broadcast, etc., etc. So there you go. Now the Christmas surprise. Everybody, 3D printing, everyone knows about 3D printing these days. In fact, there are a lot of shacks out there, amateur shacks out there, that all have 3D printers in them, and they're printing all sorts of stuff. One of my early forays into 3D printing was my case for my IC705, that orange case that you've seen on this program many times. That was one of my first forays into 3D printing. The power connector, the Anderson connector on the back of my 817 FT817 is a 3D printed power connector. Now, but this is a little bit different, and this has got a bit of a wow factor, and this is one of the reasons why I'm wearing this particular T-shirt. For those who don't know, this is a Star Wars themed T-shirt. If you know the start to the original Star Wars series, which these days they don't do this anymore. They have the helmets and the metallic helmets intro to Star Wars movies. But anyway, this is a 3D printed Viper, who is from Titanfall. Now, actually, I can bring up. I'll bring up. This is okay. So. That's interesting. Why is that? Now. Okay. Just bear with me. Because I've got it on the screen, but I haven't got it on the screen. If you know what I mean. Why have we got that not there? That's fascinating. I do have it on the screen. Let me try. There we go. Now, for those who don't know, Titanfall is an online game that is based sci-fi based. Viper is one of the pilots, the member of the Apex Predators, and the supporting antagonist in Titanfall 2. He carries himself with demeanour and cadence of a fighter pilot, and his signature piece of kit is a heavily modified North Star Titan spaceship chassis that permits extended flights, etc., etc. So this is the character. This is the character that you can see his helmet here that it is based on. This particular helmet, if we go back here, this particular helmet is 3D printed. There is 18 pieces to this. So the main helmet is printed in 4 pieces, which are glued together. There are a whole lot of additional printed parts here around the back, the visor holder, all of these little additional elements. There is a light that's going in here that I'm wiring up for Reuben. There is the visor in here, all the breathing apparatus around here, all of the accoutrements at the back that all I suspect are there to do particular things. It is Reuben's in the throes of putting the padding into the helmet. You can put the helmet on. It is life size. There are 18 particular individual bits that are actually printed. It took 50 hours to print this, and then probably as many hours to actually paint it up, and there's a lot of weathering that you can see, a lot of wear marks, a lot of weathering that Reuben prides himself on, because he's a Warhammer painter and a Warhammer player, and they pride themselves on being able to weather their Warhammer armies. So anyway, that is Viper from Titanfall 2's helmet, and there you go. So I thought I'd show that. It's a bit of cosplay, but absolutely phenomenal amount of work. But all 3D printed, took 50 hours, and there's 18 pieces in there. So I thought I'd show that as a bit of a Christmas special. So yeah, I'm convinced that you either have a twin or have mastered quantum duality. Where did you find the time? I didn't find the time, but Reuben did. Reuben's the one. My son. Reuben's VK7FREU. Funnily enough. So there you go. VK7FREU is the person who is doing that. Now let me go to. Okay. Amateur Radio magazine came out. This is the Wireless Institute's bi-monthly magazine, Amateur Radio. Came out a couple of weeks ago. Fantastic magazine. The theme in this one is there's a bit of amateurs supporting the air show up in Queensland. There is a huge article in here on how they how a whole bunch of amateurs supported the air show and provided radio support for the air show and safety support for the air show. And a fantastic article. I'll just find it. Here we go. It's the main article at the beginning. Amateurs play a critical role supporting the Pacific Air Show at the Gold Coast. And you can see, well, very topical, the Osprey, which I think's been grounded due to the issues with the Osprey. But there was a whole bunch that all, a series of chance encounters involving the airshow event CEO from California, a local Uber driver, and the Gold Coast Amateur Radio Society led to the involvement of local hams in planning, building and operating key communication support for the Pacific Air Show last August. And this article came from Mark Hanrahan, VK4DMH, and Andrew Chapman, VK4QF. So fantastic article about the air show. Here's a mass flyover. This is interesting. This is a dual control, two Yak 55s bolted together side by side with a jet added in the middle. Here's one of the operating positions. Site was fortuitously located airside, adjacent to the airshow participants and the aircraft parking area. It covered a huge part. It wasn't only the Gold Coast down here. Brisbane's up here, but it literally covered all of these. These are all repeater locations. The Amberley Air Base in Ipswich for the RAAF. That's where a lot of I think a lot of the planes were coming from. The Southport Airfield, which is just outside at the back of the Gold Coast in the hills, and then the Gold Coast was where it was all happening. So fascinating article. Pacific Air Show. Here we go. Here's the all the guys that were involved with it. And now here's Mark Hanrahan here. He now if I'm correct, he works for Channel 9, I think, up in the Gold Coast in Brisbane. So lovely guy. Had quite a bit to do with Mark when the WIA conference was held up in the at SeaWorld at the Gold Coast. So that was fantastic. But great article, and a credit to everybody involved. Really, really good. Now, the next article in AR magazine. We had a familiar author, as in yours truly, which was the short vertical antenna for 160 metres. So this is the short vertical article on how to put it together and the improvements on Drew Diamond's design, which is absolutely fantastic. Goes through all of the construction of it, the testing of it, and then I finish off with the testing that I did up here with the ground plane, the wonderful ground plane that's up here, and the testing of how many ground plane wires do you really need. And I went through and tested the 120 ground plane wires that we've got up here. I tested 4, and then I tested 8, and then 16, and tested all of those with a professional field strength meter. And I go through what the findings are there. So yeah, here's the 705 case that I was talking about, 3D printed case. I was using a 705 with an Arduino Kia at the base of it as the 5-watt transmitter that we were then measuring the field strength from. The next article, Quick and Dirty Dipole 4 Summer Shenanigans, by Richard Murnane, VK2SKY. There's silent key notice there, Barry Wilton, VK3XV. Kevin Johnson, VK4UH, who does the meteor scatter column, the regular meteor scatter column. The challenges and thrill of meteor scatter propagation. There's a pretty impressive meteor trail there. He goes through the meteor scatter mode and the fantastic things you can do with meteor scatter. Economical rugged ladder line can be made from low-cost agricultural parts. Here we see the ladder line going up to a dipole to match it. Now in the centre of the magazine is the contest calendar. So VK4SN's Alan Shannon's contest calendar for 2024. So fantastic one to copy and have on your wall. We then go on to Louis Di Stefano's his part 2 of his homebrew 3-band 100-watt HF transceiver. Huge amount of information in here, and if you're into homebrew, this is right down your alley, and all of the elements to it. And how to put it together into a pretty impressive and pretty high performance transceiver for HF, 100 watts. Newcomer's Notebook by Jules Perrin. Actually, Jules was on the webinar on Friday. I noticed the name pop up on VSWR and SWR meters and the measurement of SWR. Now, this one, this is a good Roger. This is Roger Harrison VK2ZRH, who's the editor of AR magazine, put in the Survivor's Guide to Solar Cycle 25, and I love Roger's term of phrase in here, because he says what you need to do is every day check the 10.7 centimetre solar flux reading. Keep an eye on the A and K indexes. Scan these two tables to see what to do with those values. And a quote, "It's the flux what brings pleasure, and the flares what brings the pain." Unquote, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. So really, really good. Hello to David. David Bannister there. Good evening. Merry Christmas to all. Yes, yeah, definitely. Here. Merry Christmas, season's greetings, all that stuff. So if you've got a solar flux, a 10.7 centimetre solar flux between 50 and 70, 160 to 40 favourable, higher bands, RS to poor. Rat shit to poor. And then we go all the way up and we get up to 150 to 200. Excellent minimum usable frequency and DX opportunities on all bands up to 6 metres. And 200 to 300, pandemonium. What the AK index tells you to do. So this is interesting. If you've got an A index of 0 to 3 and a KP index of 0 to 1, it's quiet, enjoy the peace, get on with it. If we go to the middle here, there's a minor storm. We've got an AAP of 48, a KKP of 5, minor storm, expect 10 to 20 metres to be poor. And then we work all the way up here to 208 to 400, so the top of the scale for the AAP, and a KKP of 8 to 9, very major storm, panic now, go to 2 metres and 70 centimetres. So that's the Survivor's Guide to Solar Cycle 25, so there you go. 13.8 volt, 50 amp power supply from a HP server power supply. We've got Keith Gooley, who's my road trip here on 122 gigahertz, and he did 20 kilometers DX on 122 gigahertz. Fantastic. He's got almost a mirror dish here. Absolutely phenomenal. And Keith, I caught up with Keith at the Alara meet. So Keith and his wife were there. The West News, so VK6 News, is the next article. The 2024 Ross Hull Memorial VHF UHF Marathon Rules. Now this runs for the month of January, and it's VHF and above, and it's your best 2, 7 or month, I think from memory. I think I'm right there. Best 7 days, best 2 days. Yep, that I was right there. Across January. So if you're into VHF, UHF, that's certainly the time to do it. The Alara contest, the Alara meet update, and I'm sure there'll be some bits and pieces come from that. The Alara contest results, DX awards with Graham Alston, VK3GA. And who's up there on the DXCC, and that's your blooming lot in Amateur Radio Magazine, the latest. And this is volume 91, number 6. So this is the last one for this year, and absolutely fantastic magazine. And yeah. And we've got there are quite a few, I think, VK7s who have got articles that are in the pipeline, I suppose you'd say, about Amateur Radio Magazine. So anyway, I've got the Survivor's Guide that I'll post on our notice board here. So that's your blooming lot. Now, my next magnetic loop project. We'll go back to my next magnetic loop project. Let's zoom in here. Now, if we have a bit of a close look here, down the bottom here, it says 4 to 100, and that's picofarads in Russian. So this is a 4 to 100 picofarad 5 kilovolt, 5000 volt vacuum variable capacitor. The vacuum variable side of it is, this is, and you'll see if you closely look, the inside of that is slowly coming down. The bellows are slowly coming down, and it's varying the capacitance of that variable vacuum capacitor. So I wonder what you're going to use that for, I hear you ask. I'm glad you asked. That is actually being used for a 500 millimeter in diameter loop using inch, so 25.4 millimeter heliax. So there'll be a 500 millimeter diameter loop around this. This is a really good. Both these mounting surfaces are basically, there will be a bracket this way and a bracket this way, and it will be silver soldered onto the heliax, so that I can get the ohmic resistance down to, hopefully down to the characteristics of the coax of the heliax, and it'll cover 6 meters, so up to 60 megs and down to about 21 megahertz. So that's what I've designed it for. So it covers 6 meters and it covers down to 15 meters. My big loop that I featured before, the big loop goes from 40 to 15 meters, and so this one covers the 15 up to 6 meters. So goes through 10 meters. Goes through the bottom end to the top end of 6 meters, so 50 to 54 megahertz, and a slightly higher than that, which is why I need it to go down to about 4 picofarads. Now, to get 4 picofarads with the amount of stray capacitance that's around is going to be a bit of a challenge, so I understand that. But that particular capacitor does go down, and I've measured it down to at least 8 picofarads. But of course, at 8 picofarads, you put your hand somewhere close to it, and it just goes off. So there you go. And hello to Ken from ZL. Can you post the Survivor's Guide on Discord, please? Oh, we can do that for you, Ken. We can certainly do that. Discord is an interesting beast. We have a Discord channel. If people online are not on the Discord channel and they would like to be, please let me know, and we'll send out the Discord address so that you can get onto the Discord channel. Now, APRS. Now, I showed last week APRS using the TNC Pi, and I showed what was going on in the APRS world around Hobart. When I started looking around Tasmania at who's running APRS in their cars or at home, or running weather stations, or running bulletin board systems, or running digipeaters, or running iGates or internet gateways, or running all sorts of things, you come across some really interesting stuff. And I'll just point out, down at Deep Bay, down the channel, there is G4RWI, who spends 6 months in the Northern Hemisphere and 6 months in the Southern Hemisphere, so basically avoids winter. That's what he says on his QRZ page, so good on him. But G4RWIs down at Deep Bay, we had VK3DMC -9, who is in town right at the moment, who pops up on APRS every so often. So I assume they're holidaying down here, or they're down here. We've got Ron VK7FREU -9, who's at the other end of Wentworth Street. I'm down the far end of Wentworth Street. So there you go. then I started looking up Santa. Now, the interesting thing about Santa, because I thought, maybe we could track Santa on APRS. So when you look up on APRS for the word Santa, there is W8CNM. W8CNM is waiting for Santa, and W8CNM is in Grand Rapids on Lake Michigan, up the sort of centre of North America, and so he's waiting for Santa. I don't know whether Santa's going to be tracked during the night of the 24th, Christmas Eve. So, and there is also there's a boat called the Santa, which is in Riga, in Latvia. So it's amazing what you can find in APRS when you start looking a little bit deeper. And of course, I just want to finish off on, nothing would be complete without the NORAD Santa Tracker. Now, I'm not going to go into the story about NORAD, but this is the North Atlantic. In fact, Lionel could probably tell me what NORAD stands for. Hang on, let me go to here. The North American Aerospace Defense Command, or NORAD, is a United States and Canada binational organisation which defends the homeland through aerospace warning, aerospace control and maritime warning for North America. So there you go. So NORAD back in the 50s started a phone service, quite by accident apparently, and kids ended up ringing in because they thought it was the hotline to Santa, and NORAD played along, and it sort of developed from there really, and they now have the Santa Tracker each year, and of course with the innovation of the internet, it absolutely exploded. If I just the hotline to Santa turn my there is yes. It sort of developed from there really. There's even Christmas music you can play. But if you go to www.noradsanta, all one word, .org, it is the Santa Tracker for NORAD. It gives you the what we went to, the NORAD HQ, the library. There is the music stage for Santa's favourite holiday songs. There's the arcade, play a new game every day. There's the gift shop, so you can buy Santa and NORAD gear. And then there is the theatre, so watch movies about Santa and NORAD, which takes you off to YouTube and the YouTube channel to see all about movies about Santa and NORAD. But come December the 24th, it will track Santa around the world, so you can track where Santa is at any point in time. So there you go. That is NORAD. So that's look it up. It's absolutely fascinating. And if you've got little kids, you can show them and get them to see where Santa is. So there you go. That's all about it. Okay, now membership renewals are going out right at the moment. If you haven't received it, please contact the Secretary on secretary@reast.asn.au, and he will certainly send you out something around renewals. Tidy HQ is your friend here. Now I usually finish off with an Australian space weather report. I have to say that everything is nil right at the moment. There was a bit of a peak a couple of days ago, but it was only a very small peak with some energy from the sun, and then it's gone back to absolutely nothing. So there are no space weather forecasting issues in the foreseeable future, but who knows? There may be a bit of energy thrown our way at some point during the Christmas break. We are running all the way through the Christmas break and the New Year break, so we'll be here every Wednesday night. So please drop in, have a look, and comment, etc. Next week we'll have a 2024 themed night, So until then, I wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a very safe entry into 2024. But we'll see you before then, and we'll catch you next time. This has been VK7OTC, the club station of the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania, with our DATV Experimenters Night, and we'll catch you next week. 73.